Two children walked into one of Seoul's most powerful corporate buildings on a Tuesday afternoon, and nobody stopped them. Not because security wasn't watching, not because the front desk wasn't staffed, but because 9-year-olds with that kind of quiet, unshakable confidence don't read like threats. They read like they belong somewhere. And these two? They walked like they owned the entire floor. Kai adjusted the strap of his worn backpack, his dark eyes sweeping the marble lobby the way a general surveys a battlefield. Beside him, his twin sister Layla pressed a manila folder against her chest like it contained the launch codes for something world-ending. In a way, it did. "We need to see Kang Min-jae," Kai told the receptionist, his Korean clean and precise, carrying only the faintest trace of an accent that made people look twice. But the woman behind the desk blinked. She had been doing this job for 4 years and had dealt with difficult clients, angry investors, and one very memorable protest outside the building involving a giant inflatable duck. She had not dealt with this. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her professional smile doing its best to survive the situation. Layla set the manila folder on the desk and slid it forward with one finger. "We don't need an appointment," she said calmly. "He's our father." The lobby went quiet the way a room goes quiet after something shatters. 3 employees near the elevator turned in slow motion. A security guard froze mid-step. The receptionist's smile didn't fall. It simply stopped working, like a phone screen that's been dropped one too many times. Kai reached into his backpack and produced a document, kept placing it beside the folder. "That's a paternity test," he said. 99.9% probability. We'd like to go up now." 43 floors above them, Kang Min-jae was staring at a presentation on sustainable energy without actually seeing it. At 34, he had turned a startup born in his parents' garage into a multinational technology company that had reshaped an entire industry. Forbes called him a visionary. Business Korea called him the Ice Prince of Seoul's corporate world. His mother called him a disappointment for still being unmarried. None of them knew about the medical report locked in his private safe, the one he had read 6 years ago in a sterile office, while a doctor used the words severe oligospermia and then waited for Min-jae to respond. 3 different specialists had told him the same thing in 3 different offices with 3 variations of the same compassionate expression. The chances of him ever fathering a child were so vanishingly small they might as well not exist. He had accepted it the way you accept a verdict. He had built walls around the grief and thrown himself into his work, and kept relationships deliberately shallow because he had decided it was cruel to offer a future he couldn't complete. His phone buzzed. Park Ji-hoon, his assistant and one of the only people he trusted. "Sir, we have a situation in the lobby. There are 2 children downstairs. They're claiming to be yours. They have documentation." Min-jae read the message twice. Then he set the phone down very carefully on his desk. His first instinct was the logical one. This was a scheme. Wealthy men attracted this kind of thing. Someone had done their homework, manufactured paperwork, coached children who were either borrowed or compensated. It happened. He had read about it happening to others. He had never thought it would happen to him, but here it was. And the cleanest thing to do was to go down there, look these people in the eye, and make clear that he was not the kind of man who could be rattled by amateur extortion. He straightened his jacket and went downstairs. Across the city, in a second-floor apartment in Yeongdeungpo, Brianna Okoro dropped her phone on the kitchen counter and stopped breathing for 3 seconds. The school had called 20 minutes ago. Her twins had walked out at lunch. The CCTV showed them leaving together, hand in hand, Kai with his backpack. Layla with that folder she'd been keeping under her bed for the past few weeks. Brianna had found the folder once while cleaning. A paternity test kit receipt. A printed DNA results summary. A business magazine article with a circled photograph. She had confronted them that night and they had looked at her with those impossibly calm, impossibly old eyes, and asked her how much longer she planned to keep their father a secret from them. She should have known this was coming. She should have seen it in the way they moved through the world, too deliberate, too precise, too methodical for any plan they made to stay theoretical for long. Brianna grabbed her purse and ran. She had spent 5 years protecting them from this moment. 5 years building a life on her own terms, working 2 jobs, staying up past midnight more times than she could count, telling herself that the man who had briefly made her feel like the most interesting person in the room at a corporate networking event she had been catering did not deserve to walk back into the life she had built from nothing. One night. That was all it had been. He had been different from the other wealthy men at that event, the ones who looked through the catering staff like they were part of the furniture. He had actually talked to her. They had spent 2 hours in a corner by the window discussing technology and art and what it meant to build something that outlasted you. She had felt seen in a way she hadn't since leaving home. And then he had left with her number promised, and a kiss that felt like the beginning of something, and she had never heard from him again. When she discovered she was pregnant, she looked for him. Kang Min-jae turned out to be a more common name in Seoul than she had expected, and without a company name or direct contact, her search kept hitting walls. By the time she saw his face on the cover of a business magazine, 8 months into her pregnancy, she was sitting in a hospital waiting room with swollen ankles and a pride that had calcified into something load-bearing. He was a CEO now, a celebrity. She was a pregnant Black American woman in Seoul who barely had enough money to cover her next month's rent. She made her decision and she made it alone. She had her babies alone, named them alone, raised them alone. She had loved them so completely that most days she convinced herself they didn't need anyone else. But her children were smarter than most days. By the time Brianna got off the subway and started running the last 2 blocks to JK Technologies, a small crowd had gathered in the lobby around her kids. Park Ji-hoon was crouched to their eye level, reading the paternity test results with the expression of a man watching reality rearrange itself in real time. "How did you get this test done?" he asked. "We saved our allowances," Kai explained. "We also took on some coding contract work online. It took us about 6 months. The DNA sample came from a comb our father left at our apartment 5 years ago. Layla kept it." Ji-hoon looked at them. These were 9-year-olds. 9. You funded a covert paternity investigation through freelance coding at 9 years old? "We read a lot," Layla said simply. "We're also first in our class. Mum says we get the drive from her side. We wanted to find out what we got from his." The elevator opened, the crowd parted, and Kang Min-jae stepped into the lobby. Layla and Kai stood at the exact same moment, the way twins sometimes move without coordinating it, as though sharing a signal no one else can hear. And Min-jae stopped walking. He had prepared himself for a scam. He had not prepared for the jolt that went through him when he saw their faces, his jaw, his eyes, his exact way of standing still while everything around him moved. Twice. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice controlled. "I'm Kai," the boy said. He stood straight. He did not fidget. "This is my twin sister Layla. We're 9 years old. Our birthday is March 15th. We live in Yeongdongpo with our mother, Brianna Okoro. We attend Seoul International Elementary. We speak Korean, English, and we're currently learning Mandarin. We both code. I focus on artificial intelligence. Layla specializes in cybersecurity. And according to that DNA test from one of Korea's most accredited genetics labs, you are our biological father with a 99.9% probability. We thought you should know." Min-jae felt the floor shift under him. He reached for logic, the medical report, the 3 doctors, the verdict he had accepted. "That's not possible," he said quietly. "I have a condition. I was told I couldn't father children." "Severe oligospermia," Kai said, and Min-jae's head came up like a wire had been pulled. "We accessed your medical records. Don't worry, we covered our tracks. We didn't share the information with anyone. We needed to understand whether you might genuinely not have known about us. Your condition means your sperm count is critically low, not absent. The probability of conception was extremely small, but not mathematically zero. We are, statistically speaking, an anomaly. Some people would use the word miracle. We prefer anomaly. It's more precise. Min-jae stared at him. You hacked my medical records. It wasn't particularly difficult, Layla said, sounding almost disappointed by this fact. Your hospital's network security is outdated. You should really look into upgrading it. We could help, actually. We charge reasonable rates. We're saving for university. And something came loose inside Min-jae's chest then. Some tightly wound coil that had been holding his composure in place snapped without warning. And what escaped wasn't exactly a laugh, but it wasn't not a laugh either. You're 9 years old and you're already planning for university. We were already accepted into a gifted program, Layla corrected. We start next semester. It's expensive. Mom is working extra shifts. That's actually part of why we came. If you've ever watched something you built get restructured in real time, you know what Min-jae's face looked like right then. And if you're watching this channel right now and you're thinking that this story has you completely hooked, there are more stories like this one waiting for you on City of Afro-Korean Tales. Subscribe right now so you don't miss a single one. All right. Back to Kai and Layla, who were standing in a marble lobby calmly dismantling a billionaire's entire understanding of his own life. It's not a handout, Kai continued. We don't need your sympathy. But parents have a legal and moral responsibility to contribute to their children's education, even when they didn't know those children existed. We researched it. Min-jae took the folder from Ji-hoon with hands that were not entirely steady. Inside were the test results, their birth certificates listing father unknown, report cards that were nothing but straight A's, coding competition certificates, and at the bottom, a photograph of 2 newborns so small they fit together in a single hospital incubator. He had been somewhere building something the day they were born. He had no idea what city they had been born in. He hadn't known they existed. Your mother, he said, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. Brianna, I remember her. We were at a corporate event, we talked for hours, my phone was stolen that night. I lost her number. I tried to find her afterward, but I didn't even have a last name. She tried to find you too, Layla said. Something in her voice had shifted, softened just slightly. She told us once. She said she looked for weeks. When she finally found you in a magazine, she was already 8 months pregnant. She said you were a CEO and she was a broke pregnant immigrant, and she was too proud to become a scandal for someone who hadn't even thought to try harder to find her. A pause. She works as a nursing assistant during the day. She cleans offices at night. She doesn't complain about it. She sings to us before bed even when her voice is tired. She taught us 3 languages at a kitchen table with second-hand textbooks. She told us we could be anything. She's the strongest person we know, and you missed every single part of it. Min-jae turned away. He stood at the window and looked at a city he had conquered. And he thought about all the things those words meant. First words, first steps, first day of school, every birthday, every competition, every night they went to sleep, wondering why there was no father. He had been right here, 43 floors up, closing deals and collecting awards, and they had been growing up without him in an apartment he'd never seen. I want to be in your lives, he said, turning back to face them. If you'll let me, if your mother will agree. Mum's stubborn, Kai said in the tone of someone presenting a fact, not a complaint. She's not going to make it easy. She'll also probably be upset about the medical records situation. You're going to tell her? We don't keep things from her, Layla said, with a firmness that settled the question completely. She's always been honest with us. We owe her the same. Then the office door burst open. Brianna Okoro came through it like she had been running flat out for the last 6 blocks, which she had. Her nursing scrubs were wrinkled. Her natural hair was half out of the bun she'd put it in that morning. Her dark eyes swept the room and found her children, and she crossed the space between them so fast no one else moved, dropping to her knees and pulling them both into her arms hard enough to make them grunt. "Don't you ever?" she started, and then her voice broke, and she held them tighter instead of finishing the sentence. "We're sorry," Layla said, and for the first time since they'd walked into this building, she sounded like a child. "We didn't mean to scare you. We were careful." "Careful," Brianna repeated. She pulled back and held their faces in her hands, tears she hadn't planned to cry moving down her cheeks. "You left school without permission. You took the subway alone across the city. You walked into a corporate headquarters and told the whole lobby who your father was. What if something had gone wrong? What if—" She stopped. She exhaled. She looked at Min-jae for the first time. 5 years. He was still handsome, maybe more so now, the way that certain kinds of faces deepen with time rather than fade. He was still composed, still held himself like gravity was an inconvenience he tolerated. But there was something fractured in his eyes she had not expected to find there. Something raw that the Ice Prince of Seoul was clearly not practiced at showing. "Brianna," he said quietly. "Don't," she said. The warmth in his voice when he said her name was the most dangerous thing in the room. "We are not old friends catching up. You don't get to say my name like it means something. We had one night. You disappeared. I spent 5 years alone. You don't get credit for nostalgia." "You're right," he said. "I'm not asking for credit. I'm asking you to believe that I didn't know. I'm asking for a chance to be in their lives." "They don't need you," she said. And the fierceness in her voice was something he recognized, a mother's love dressed up as armor. "We've been fine. We've survived everything we've had to survive. Or we always do." "Mom," Kai said quietly, stepping forward, and that single word from her son made Brianna go still. "We do need him. Maybe not the way we needed you when we were small, but there's a different kind of need. Medical history, resources, and," he paused, exchanging that wordless twin glance with Layla, "you always told us family mattered. You talked about home, about the people who raised you, about how much you missed belonging to something bigger than just the three of us. He's family, biologically and factually. We want to know him." Brianna closed her eyes. She had taught them those things, every word of it. She had told them that family was worth fighting for, that connection was worth the risk, that love was a brave thing to extend to someone new. And now it was coming back to her, through her own children's voices, and asking her to extend something to the man who had unknowingly walked out of her story and left her to write the rest alone. "I need time," she said. "This is too much. I need to think." "Take whatever time you need," Min-jae said. He walked to his desk. He opened a drawer. Brianna's face hardened before he even produced the checkbook. "If that's money, put it away." "It's child support," he said, continuing to write. 5 years of it. Backdated. Not charity. Not guilt. Legal and moral responsibility. He held out the check. The number on it was large enough that when Brianna looked at it, her brain simply refused it for a moment, like a file too big to open. She stood there for a long time. She thought about the bills on her counter. The gifted program acceptance letter she had taped to the refrigerator and stared at every morning while trying to figure out how to pay for it. The shoes Layla was outgrowing. The rice and eggs dinners at the end of tight months. The bathroom where she cried quietly after midnight so her kids wouldn't hear. "I'll take it," she said. And the words were harder to say than almost anything she'd ever said. "For them. Not because I forgive you. You missed 5 years. You don't walk in with money and get to call yourself their father. You have to earn that. Whatever comes next, you earn it slowly. On our terms." "I understand," Min-jae said. The office door opened again without a knock. Brianna's instincts pulled her children close before she even turned to see who it was. Kang Hae-jin moved into the room the way powerful women move when they want everyone to feel how much space they're entitled to take. Designer everything. Posture like a steel rod. Eyes that had closed million-dollar negotiations and emerged unmoved. She looked at Min-jae the way a general looks at a soldier about to make a catastrophic strategic error. "Tell me it isn't true. she said, her voice carefully controlled. Then her eyes found Kai and Layla. Then Brianna. And her expression didn't change, which was somehow worse than if it had. "It's true," Minjae said. "Mother, these are my children. Kai and Layla. This is their mother, Brianna Okoro." His mother did not look at them the way a grandmother looks at grandchildren. She looked at them the way a problem looks at a timeline. "Get them out of this building," she said quietly. "Before this becomes a scandal that undoes everything you have worked for." "They're not going anywhere," Minjae said. "You are not thinking clearly." Her voice dropped, low and deliberate. "I will remove you from the company, Minjae. I will take everything. The board will back me. Do you understand what you are choosing?" "I'm choosing my children," he said. And the simplicity of it was the most dangerous thing he could have said to her, because it had no angle she could negotiate against. Kai stepped forward. He held the folder out toward Minjae's mother. "The test was conducted by GAN Laboratory Korea," he said. "That's the same lab your son's company uses for research partnerships. Would you like to review it? 99.9% is the ceiling of what the science can certifiably confirm. The DNA doesn't care about the board of directors." Heijin stared at this 9-year-old with her son's eyes and his precision and the particular brand of composure that clearly ran in blood, rather than in upbringing. Something flickered behind her controlled expression. Not affection, but recognition. She turned to Brianna instead. "How much?" she asked flatly. "Name a number. Take your children. Disappear. I will make sure you live comfortably. All of you. Just go back to wherever you came from and leave my family alone." Brianna straightened. She was tired. She had been running for 30 minutes and working a double the day before, and she was carrying 5 years of doing everything alone in her posture, but she stood at her full height and she looked at this woman without flinching. "Your money means nothing to me," she said. "Oh, your approval means less. I didn't come here today. My children did. What happens next isn't your decision. It isn't even really mine anymore." She looked at Minjae, steady and hard. "It's his, depending on whether he can prove he deserves a place in their lives." She took Kai and Layla by the hand and moved toward the door. "You have my number," she told Minjae, without looking back. "If you want to see them, call. If your mother's threats are louder than they are, that's your answer too. We've survived 5 years without you. We'll survive whatever comes next. We always do." She was at the door when Layla broke free. The little girl ran back across the room and stopped in front of Minjae. She looked up at him with his own eyes looking back at him, and something in her face that was the first fully unguarded thing he had seen from her since they walked in. "Are we going to see you again?" she asked. "Actually? Or is this the part where you disappear?" Minjae knelt down. He looked at her, then gestured for Kai to come close too, and both of them stood before him, close enough that he could see the worn hems of their school uniforms, the cracked screen on Kai's phone held together with tape, the particular way they both tilted their heads slightly when assessing something. His tilt. On their faces. "Yes," he said. "I promise you both, I'm not disappearing. I'm going to make mistakes. I have a lot to learn, but I'm not going anywhere. You have my word." "Words are easy," Kai said. "Mom taught us that. And she said watch what people do, not what they say." "Then watch me," Minjae said. "Both of you. Hold me accountable. You're smart enough to know the difference between someone who means it and someone who's just managing a situation. So watch what I do next. And call me out if I fail." Layla studied his face for a long moment with those ancient, assessing eyes. Then she nodded once, slow, deliberate. "We'll give you a chance," she said quietly. "But if you hurt her, if you make promises you don't keep, Kai and I will not forgive you. She gave up everything for us. She has been hurt enough. We will not let anyone do that to her again. Not even you." "I understand," Minjae said, and he meant every syllable. Layla went back to her mother. The door closed softly behind all 3 of them. And Minjae stayed kneeling on the floor of his corner office for a moment longer in the place where his daughter had just been standing, feeling the full weight of what had just walked into and then out of his life in the space of 2 hours. His mother said something behind him. He didn't hear it. He stood and walked to the window and looked out at Seoul in the early evening light, thinking about which direction the nearest subway stop was from here, thinking about 2 9-year-olds on a train home, probably already analysing everything, constructing spreadsheets of his behaviour, setting benchmarks he didn't yet know about. When Ji-hoon came back in, Min-jae didn't turn around. "Find out where they live," and he said, "not to investigate. I believe everything they told me. But I need to understand what their life actually looks like, so I know what they need. That gifted program they mentioned. Find it. Fund it anonymously for now. And clear my schedule for the rest of the week." Ji-hoon paused at the door. "Sir, I've worked for you for 6 years. I've never seen you care about anything the way you cared about those 2 kids today." Min-jae didn't answer, but he didn't argue either. He stood at the window as Seoul lit up below him, city by city, block by block, and he thought about a woman who had raised his children through exhaustion and pride and love so fierce it had walked into his building on 2 small pairs of legs and handed him a paternity test. He thought about Brianna's spine when she stood up to his mother, about Kai's voice when he explained that words were easy, about the question in Layla's eyes when she asked if this was the part where he disappeared. His mother's threats were real. She was already making calls, he was certain of it. The board would hear about this before morning. The media might catch the story within days. His carefully constructed world was about to be tested in ways that no acquisition or hostile takeover had ever tested it. But something else was louder than all of that tonight. Something he had not felt in years, maybe not since before the doctors and their verdicts and the walls he had built afterward. Not hope exactly, something with more teeth than hope. A specific, undeniable thing that lived in his chest now and had his children's faces. He had thought he would never have a family. He had accepted that as the shape of his future. And then 2 9-year-olds had walked through his lobby with his jaw and their mother's fire and a manila folder full of evidence. And they had not asked him to feel something. They had simply arrived. And the feeling had happened anyway, the way impossible things sometimes do. The real question was what he was going to do next, because Brianna was not going to make this easy, because his mother was not going to make this quiet, because his children were already watching him, already keeping score, already building a case for or against him in those brilliant, unforgiving minds. And Kang Min-jae had never, not once in his entire career, backed down from something that mattered, because it was difficult. The city burned bright below him. Somewhere in it, his children were going home. And tomorrow, everything was going to change. Say, if you felt every single second of that, you are exactly the kind of person this channel was made for. Hit subscribe right now on City of Afro-Korean Tales, because the next story coming is going to hit even harder than this one. Don't miss it.